Good morning and welcome to Thursday. So today is Genesis 43. Go ahead and read it on your own. And it's titled The Second Journey to Egypt. And so again, scholars believe the first trip was in the first year of the famine. So one thing to remember that Joseph knew, right, and Pharaoh, I don't know if they told everybody, but they knew in Egypt, at least some people knew, that the famine was going to last 7 years. But definitely the surrounding nations didn't know that. So maybe they thought we're just going to have one hard year of famine and then the rains are going to come back. So they didn't know. So at all intentions and purposes, it seems like they were content to leave poor Simeon behind, that they weren't planning on going back, right? Because Jacob did refuse. He says, no, I'm not going to give you Benjamin to go back. But again, there's this need because they run out of food eventually and they need more food. So they have to. The need is they have to go back to Egypt. And so finally, the brothers, it was Judah who actually convinced his dad to, let me take Benjamin. I will make sure he comes back to you. And so what they do is they go back and they double the money, right? Because Joseph had packed their money back in their bag. So they bring gifts and they bring double their money and then they go back. And Joseph meets them and he invites them to dinner. And what he does is he brings back Simeon. He's like, oh, Simeon's back to you. And so there's lots of interesting things in this dinner. First of all, Joseph, for the first time in 20 years, see his brother Benjamin. Remember, Benjamin was young when Joseph got sold into slavery. So he probably hasn't seen him as a man. And so he's so overcome with emotion that he excuses himself to his chamber and he weeps. So then what happens in this dinner, so there's a lot of things that I didn't catch before in reading this passage. So one thing in this dinner is he puts them in place, he seats them from eldest to youngest. And so they're thinking, how would he know this? And I'm wondering at some point, would they figure out that this is Joseph on their own? Like, I still don't understand why they hadn't, I mean, he probably looked kind of similar. But so they're thinking, this is kind of weird. He puts us in birth order. And that was impossible for someone to do that, right? And then what he does is he gives Benjamin 5 times portion of food than he does the rest of the brothers. And he does this because he wants to gauge the reaction. Again, he's seeing if there's true repentance, see if they are contrite, see if there's still hatred in their hearts or if there's any change. And because, again, the next favorite person is Benjamin. So he wants to see how do they treat Benjamin. But it seems like they're not jealous of Benjamin because it doesn't say anything that they notice that or they're angry about that. So the other thing that I want to point out, and we're going to camp on for the rest of this devotion, is that they were segregated. And then Joseph was also segregated. So Joseph sat alone in this dinner. The brothers sat alone in this dinner. And the Egyptians sat over here. Because even though Joseph was in charge and he was accepted and respected and had all this position, he still was not an Egyptian. And Egypt at that time was the most racially segregated country, because they believed that they came directly from God's, but no one else did. And so why this is important is because this is a preview to Exodus. This is a preview that if God left his people in Canaan as a small group, they would have assimilated into the Canaanites. And that's not what he wanted. He wanted them to be a people that would serve him and follow him, not following the gods of the land. And so it was God's wisdom, even though the circumstance was not good as slavery, but there was no way that Egyptians were going to assimilate with the Hebrews. And so as slaves, as being Hebrews with Egyptians, they were free to just be one people group, one nation, and they grew to millions in the 400 years of slavery. So that's just something to think about, right? There's already that preview of what God's going to take his people and let them grow and multiply and grow into a nation of millions where they wouldn't have in Canaan because there was already signs of assimilating, right? So we already see God's plan and purpose. See you tomorrow. And remember, 5 minutes in the Word can change your life.